because he made bad investments, and so they came to collect, and they collected his knee. Cheers, everyone! Welcome back. My name is Mackenzie. Welcome to my channel. I'm drinking water. Today we are doing a get ready with me and spoiler talk of dun, 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 A Court of Thorns and Roses. So as previously stated in past videos, I have not read any of Sarah J. Maas's books, so when I decided to pick one up because Bookstagram and Booktube, everyone everywhere, love them, I was going to pick up, what series? What is this even called? So A Court of Thorns and Roses is the first book in the self-titled series, which I believe has 4 books total. And so I decided that since these books are well beloved amongst pretty much everyone, and I have a fair amount of love for YA and fantasy, I mean, the author has been praised very heavily, so I felt like it was a safe bet. Like, after so many people tell you how much they love something, and after so many memes, it's almost like if you don't read it, you don't get it. You know, there's like this whole subculture on Instagram where, mainly Instagram, because that's where I spend a lot of my time these days, just, you know, reels of people acting like Fairyland and all of this fan art, and I'm just like, I have no idea. But so many people love this, you know? And so I guess it was really the fandom for me that sold me on the book, as well as the fact that they have these new covers and they're in paperback now, okay? Honest tea, here it is, I don't like the original covers. With the lady and the sword, not my thing. I don't like people on covers, and not to mention, it was very boring. You know, it doesn't reel you in, you know, and it doesn't look as pretty. You know, put them side by side. I like that one better. I know not a lot of people agree with me, but that's how I feel. So with the books having new covers and coming out in paperback, and everyone making new reels, and they're so funny, so funny. So I just had to read it. So I did. I picked it up. I picked up just the first book because I guess that is what November has been about for me. I've just been reading the first of a lot of series to see if I like them, you know? We'll start with the star rating. I gave it a 3 out of 5. And I'm going to explain why. Because I didn't not enjoy this book. I very much enjoyed this book. It was very fun. It was delightful. It was delicious. Very, very good. However, I felt like there were a few things that maybe did not live up to the hype or their potential. There was absolutely nothing wrong with the story that she told. I had no issue with it, especially after realizing that it's somewhat of a retelling of Beauty and the Beast, which is very cool. However, Sarah J. Maas was very much able to make it its own story, and if you weren't aware of Beauty and the Beast, or you weren't aware that those things might have been happening, maybe you would have connected them on your own, but it's just kind of nice, you know? They were far enough and separated enough, but close enough together. Very good. Before we get into the book anymore, let's go over some products. We have my Beauty Balm BB Cream. Delightful. NYX. Yes, I use it. We have NYX Concealer. Ooh, Rimmel Scandalize. Revolution. Forever Flawless Color Palettes. Makeup Revolution London. Branding. Marketing, selling. Alright, let's put some makeup on my face. There's Fairy, who's our main character, and let me just tell you, if they did not put the pronunciation in the book for how you're supposed to say Fairy's name, I would have been saying fire the whole time. So, good call on their part. So there's Fairyland. She has 2 older sisters. We cannot multitask. Fairyland has 2 older sisters who are named Nesta and Elaine. Poor Nesta having the weirdest name possible. Like, unless it means something important that I'm not getting. I think Feyre's name means beauty, and that's why it's important. But why is Nesta the only one with the weird name? And then they have a disabled father who, he's not like, he wasn't born disabled. He was beaten because he made bad investments, and so they came to collect, and they collected his knee. And so Feyre, being the youngest child, of course, she has to provide for her family and go out and hunt. And for whatever reason, her mother made her promise on her mother's deathbed. Her mother asked 11-year-old Feyre, take care of them. And she was like, yup, that's my deal. That's what I'm gonna do at 11 years old. Take care of 2 women who are older than me and my father. Keep them together, take care of them. The beginning of the book, while it was easy to get through because we very quickly got on to like, let's go to Prythian, which is the Fairyland, and I will probably call it Fairyland for the rest of the video because Prythian is a hard name to remember. The beginning is hard for me to suspend my disbelief because why is she having to take care of her family? Why is her father so broken and pitiful? Why aren't her older sisters better people? There was a lot for me that I just didn't understand in the beginning, and I was just very eager for her to get to Fairyland, and then she did. It was exciting. So Feyre kills a wolf while she's hunting. The wolf ends up being important, is a fairy, and so another fairy, Tamlin, comes to collect his pound of flesh. So when he comes, he takes Feyre and is like, hey, the treaty says that I have to kill you, but you could also come live on my land as well. Suspension of disbelief. However, at least this one comes back to mean something, you know, at least. Because Feyre later finds out that he's under a spell and he needs her to break the spell. So that's why he's taking her to the castle. So at least the suspension of disbelief is mitigated by the fact that you're given an explanation. So she goes, and we find out more about Prythian and how there is the spring, summer, fall, and winter courts. And then there's the day court, the dawn court, and the night court. Okay? So many courts. But however, like the Fairyland and the fairy governments are not explained very well. And I'm not sure if it's because our main character, Feyre, has no clue, but she's spouting things like she knows. Like, she'll say, like, this is how fairies are, but she has no basis for that information, and it turns out she's wrong. So it just leads to confusion for the reader. And I'm not sure if we're doing that on purpose because that's the kind of character that Feyre is, or if the author just didn't know how to explain things yet, or if she didn't want us to know and purposefully made it vague and confusing. So it's just kind of frustrating the whole time throughout the book. You feel like you're just being left in the dark. Yeah, I don't know. It's just a lot of being left in the dark, and it was very frustrating, especially because the magic system and fairies are the biggest pull of this book. What do you say that this book is about? Fairies. Fairies. That's what you say that this book is about. So what do you want the book to be about? Fairies. I want to know more about the fairies. So it's a reason why it got a 3-star and not a higher rating, because I felt like there was a lot of purposeful vagueness that was happening, and I wanted to be drawn in. I wanted more. You know, I just wanted a little bit more of the magic and the fairies and the world, because I felt like what we did get was just there to create jealousy between Feyre and Tamlin. God, this book was crazy. All right, let's start doing a makeup. So we're probably gonna go with retrograde and harp. Okay. So after Tamlin takes Feyre to his castle, she gets to find out that the wolf she killed was like their friend, and there's a lot of like vagueness going on because there's a curse that they can't talk about, right? A lot of it, the first part, after she gets there, she tries to figure out if there's a way for her to get back to her family. She thinks that her family is going to be in danger without her, mainly because they don't know how to take care of themselves. And she's completely correct, they don't know how to take care of themselves, so her worries are valid. Does that, she tries to figure out if there's a way. She meets some... They're also supposed to be fairies, but they're not high fairies, like the high fae. And this is what's another irritating part, is that there's branches of fairies. There's the high fae, who are, and I'm not sure if the high fae are just the fairy lords and ladies who run the courts, or if they are like the whole group of court. And there's so much confusion, and I feel like I would better benefit from like a description of in the beginning, because in the beginning there's a cute little map, and that's cute. But what I would really like, if I had to choose, I would probably prefer a hierarchy of the fairies, because there are the high fae, which, okay, high fae, but then there's like a slew of lower fairies that like can look like trees or maybe animals, I'm not sure. And some of them are like mean and creaturous and like aren't part of a court, and no one's bothering to explain anything to Feyre. They're just saying it's dangerous, and she's so caught up in her own love story that she's not asking the important questions or forcing those conversations. And it's very, very difficult when you're following one person's point of view, because you have to wait for them. You have to wait for them to either be told or to care enough about something to ask, which is very, very frustrating, because I feel like I have a lot more curiosity than a lot of these main characters end up having. And Feyre specifically, like, truly is she caught up in her own love story that I know nothing about fairies, and that's fine. This is a romance. I'm not going to whatever, but reader in me who loves fantasy and who loves creatures and epics, like, I really wanted more fairy information. And I'm sure I'll get it as the series goes on. This is the first book. Who knows if Sarah J. Maas even intended for this to continue on as it has. And on top of that, if this truly was supposed to be a Beauty and the Beast retelling, nothing more, nothing less, she's done an astounding job, you know? What I got was more YA romance. It wasn't bad. I don't know. It wasn't the best either. Their relationship is very immature. Okay, so while she's trying to figure out if she can find a way back to her house or out of the oath or out of the treaty, which is not very well explained either, and since there is a curse as well, we're not sure how much is the curse and how much is the treaty. No idea. She tries to like find a few different like middling fairies to like tell her the truth and figure out if she can go back. She can't go back. One of them, who is an honest fairy, like always has to tell you the truth, said stay with the High Lord and everything will be okay. And so like that's something that she carries with her the whole time. There's also a few times where she's attacked by middling fairies and Tamlin has to save her, and that's cool. So after she decides that her life there is forever, she asks Tamlin for paint because she's a painter. Yeah, so she's not a reader, she's a painter. So she asks for paint. And whatever, they live fine. And then it's a few things are brought up, and I'm wondering why. It's brought up that mating is a thing, and it's mating in this like preternatural sense. So it's much more like, it's not like with animals and in the human realm what we think when we say mating. It's more of like, oh no, that's like my soulmate, I guess, is how I can connect that. So that's brought up. It's said that elves, these aren't elves, these are fairies. So it was said that fairies can be married, but once they find their mate, like it's over. Their marriage is null and void, basically. And nothing has come up yet in the book about why that should be important, but it was a conversation. So we're thinking about that because I also know that Feyre doesn't stay with Tamlin. I know this because I spoiled it for myself before I even, read the book. All Instagram spoiled it for me. So I know she doesn't end up with Tamlin. And it's interesting that this thing was brought up. And then another thing was brought up, Fire Night. So Fire Night is where, like, Tamlin, as the High Lord of Spring Courts, and that was supposed to be like a reveal, but I figured that out as soon as he came for Feyre. I was like, no random fairy is just gonna come and hold up the treaty. It has to be a High Lord or High Lady or someone, So anyways, High Lord Tamlin has to, like, take in the magic from the land, go hunt a white doe, and then come back and choose a fairy lady to, like, do the deed with for that night. And it's supposed to, like, bring the harvest. I don't know. I didn't understand. It's like a give and take of magic. Like, since the land is giving Tamlin the magic, he does things with it. I don't know why hunting and doing the deed are what the supernatural magic from the earth needs, and then afterwards it's able to go back into the earth or the world. I don't know if they're on earth. So that was brought up, and it's interesting because, at the end we're told that Tamlin brought Feyre to the castle so that way she could break the spell that all of them are under because Beauty and the Beast. So he did that, but he couldn't wait until after Fire Night? Like, he knew whoever he was gonna bring, he was gonna, like, try and get them to love him. Why would you bring them when Fire Night was coming up? Like, that didn't make sense to me because they made it seem like it was an intense jealousy thing. Like, when he was given the magic from the earth, he wanted her, right? Not the other fairy ladies, but the magic made him choose someone else. And, like, she's, like, kind of jealous, and he's, like, upset. It's such a strange thing to bring up that it makes me wonder why. Because if there's no bigger reason, and I have theories, if there's no bigger reason why Fire Night was brought up in the first book, then it just seems like it's a reason to describe their relationship as super immature. And also, Tamlin's supposed to be like 500 years old, and he doesn't act like it. And that is something that's kind of crazy to me, and I'm a little bit over, because I read the vampire stories and I read the supernatural creature stories. I'm over 500-year-old creatures who act like teenagers. And 500-year-old creature who can't have the forethought or doesn't have the forethought to think about, like, how could I best make someone fall in love with me? How about I don't make them jealous? Or create a situation that's gonna make everyone feel awkward. And that's this whole forbidden thing, right? Because she's human. And that's why he loves her, because she's human. But he can't do Fire Night with a human, because that's not what the magic requires, right? And so he's upset that the magic made him take another one, but I don't understand. God, yeah, just that whole situation, I wasn't sure why it was there. And I'm really hoping that it comes back to be a bigger, a bigger deal. Because, like, why? Just why? That was like a whole 2 chapters of, first of all, them not telling her what Fire Night was and trying to be secretive of, as if she wasn't gonna find out. Like, as soon as I was told that it was a springtime activity, a fairy activity that she wasn't invited to, pretty much figured out what it was. So I don't know why everyone consistently tries to not tell her things. It's frustrating. And then as the reader, I'm frustrated. I'm really not frustrated that Feyre's left in the dark. I'm frustrated that I'm left in the dark. Keep Feyre in the dark, but you gotta tell me something, because most of the time I'm walking around like I have no idea what's going on, and really the only thing that's mattering is the romance, because that's the only thing that I have full detail on, is the romance. Everything else is just kind of vague description of something. But I know what every single one of these men look like. Those aren't vague. Promise. Okay, yeah, the 2 things that were interesting then, being Fire Night. Ooh, I'm doing red, talking about Fire Night. Mating and Fire Night. They were brought up. I don't know why they were brought up. I have theories. I have a theory about why Feyre doesn't end up with Tamlin based on those 2 things. Then we meet Rysand, and he came, when did he come? He came at Fire Night, right? Because Feyre was like, I'm gonna go out there, I'm gonna see what Fire Night's about. And Rysand came and he was like, I will save you from these fairies who are going to take advantage of you. So he saved her, basically, and then he comes back, right? He comes to the castle and is like, what is this human doing here? And then, like, Tamlin acts like when Rysand comes and figures out that Feyre's there, I lost the love I had for Tamlin. He totally grovels. It's interesting because Tamlin is resigned to his fate. He is resigned to the fact that he and his court are done for, right? Even though he brings Feyre. He brings Feyre to the court even though he is already, like, nah. Like, because it's weird. Like, he brings Feyre thinking that he's gonna break the curse, but then he does things like, preventing her from breaking it and preventing them from getting close. It's a lot. He's very confusing. And at this point, I wasn't sure if Tamlin was strong enough to be with Feyre. Because Feyre is a boss, okay? Feyre took care of the 3 older members of her family. She taught herself how to hunt. She can't read or write, and she's teaching herself. And she's kind of so kick-ass. She's so kick-ass. And Tamlin in that chapter, weak sauce. Weak sauce in that chapter. And he's all like, I can't protect myself. How can I protect you? And as I was reading it, I was like, okay, maybe they're really in danger. But when we come to find out that there's, the one lady, Amarantha, who has all the other fairy lords' hearts in her grasp and their powers in check, and she has given Rysand more power. I mean, Tamlin is just like, I am gonna roll over. All Feyre had to do was say that she loved Tamlin to break the curse. That would have been it. I mean, we don't know that Amarantha would have let that happen. Probably not. But he wasn't willing to try. It is just so, it put a bad taste in my mouth about the kind of person that Tamlin was, because he was just so resigned to the fate he was being given. So after Rysand comes and very thoroughly threatens Feyre, we still don't know how we feel about that. But after that, just dab it on. Dab it on. Okay, so after Rysand comes, that's basically when Tamlin's like, Feyre, you gotta go. because I can't protect you. And she's like, okay. This is the part of the story where I'm like, are we just following the Beauty and the Beast pattern because we have to? Because you were doing this on purpose? Or was this really where you wanted to take the story? I don't know. I really don't know. It was frustrating. At this point it becomes frustrating for me. Feyre goes back to her town, she found out earlier that Tamlin had been taking care of her family and giving them money and all that stuff, but she finds out how thoroughly they've been taken care of and really doesn't worry about them anymore. Her family was put under a glamour to forget that Tamlin burst through the door and kidnapped her. But her older sister, Nesta the Besta was not glamored. She remembered. She tried to save Feyre, she couldn't. We get a newfound respect for Nesta the Besta. And then Feyre's like, you know what? I have to go back to not to Rysand, not yet. I have to go back to Tamlin and save them. So she figures out her way to the Spring Court, even though earlier in the book she had no idea how to get there. She figures herself out how to get there. And that's when we meet Amarantha. That's when we reveal that Tamlin and his whole court was under the curse. Amarantha has a vendetta because her sister she loved a human and the human did not love her. The human betrayed Amarantha's sister and killed her. So she basically did the same thing to Tamlin and was like, I'm gonna curse you, because she wanted Tamlin. And then this is the thing for me as well. All of these ferrymen are gorgeous. All of them. Why is Amarantha like, I want the High King of the Spring Court? And it seems to me as if the Spring Court's kind of lowly, because Tamlin has, like, not as cool of power as Rysand does. So it really... Why? Why do we want Tamlin? What is so good about Tamlin, aside from the fact that he's a beautiful ferryman like the rest of the beautiful ferrymen? So since Tamlin didn't want to be with Amarantha, she was like, you are cursed. You have to find a human to love you. First of all, that human has to kill a fairy in cold blood, and then you have to get that human to fall in love with you. We learned that Amarantha comes from like this fairyland off to the west. I'm good with maps. From another fairyland, and she was someone's general, but now she's kind of like trying to take control of things now. And this is another frustrating part because I don't have enough information to understand completely all that's going on. It's just like vague bits and pieces, but the more important thing is the romance, so don't worry about those vague bits and pieces we're doing, okay? So once Feyre gets there, she's like, I am gonna save these people. And Amarantha's like, you have to go through 3 trials and I will free everybody. Or you can answer my riddle and I'll free everyone immediately. And Feyre is like, I give her some credit, because while she's trying to make this deal with Amarantha, she's trying to make sure everything is like said correctly so that the magic like doesn't betray her, right? But while she's trying to do that, she doesn't make sure that the 3 trials are gonna free everyone immediately like the riddle would. So at this point we know that she's going to do all 3 of the trials and then answer the riddle, and that'll be the end. It becomes a very predictable story towards the end, especially when I'm not caught up in like fairy intrigue. These 3 trials could have been really cool. Like, I think one of them's a sandworm, which is very cool for me because the sci-fi geek in me was like, ooh, a sandworm. The focus is not on the trials, it's on, oh, is Tamlin, betraying any sign of emotion that he loves me? No, Tamlin is stone cold Steve Austin, not looking at you, betraying nothing. And there's another fairy guy that's been around. His name is Lucian. And he's Tamlin's like number 2, and he's been helping Feyre, but he's also kind of mean. And Lucian was like, do you ever think that he's trying to make sure that Amarantha doesn't know what hurts him the most? And I'm like, Feyre is being tortured. Oh, I did forget. In the middle of her trials, she didn't think that Lucien was coming to save her, because Lucien had told her before, basically, that she was on her own and she was nervous. So Rysand came to her and was like, "You're gonna die, and I can smell it. I can save you if you give something back to me." Because fairies, high lords, high fae, don't give something for nothing. So what does she give? She gives a week out of every month for the rest of her life to Rysand. So she'll go to the night court where he is High Lord and hang out for a week every month. Like custody or something. And after they make that deal, he like brings her out instead of having to wait in her cell for the next trial. Because it takes 3 months to do the trial. So in between all of her trials, he takes her out of her cell and like makes her come to the parties and like dance for him. Like, you know, this is also a part where I'm like, what is this? Are we just making Tamlin jealous? Is a lot of this book just making the other person jealous? Or is there actually, in fact, going to be a reason why these were brought up in the first book? Questions. So, the third trial comes, and the third trial is for Feyre to kill 3 fairies. And that totally blows, because she has to kill 3 fairies. And she, like, has come to realize that her prejudices were just that. They were prejudice, and that fairies are good people, and no one should be murdered. But she also realizes that Amarantha has every High Lord's power under her control. And that if she doesn't free everyone, no one will be safe, you know? And so it was kind of nice because it was one of those beautiful, it's a philosophical question of, if the train is coming down the tracks and the tracks split into 2, and on one track is 1 person and on the second track is 5 people, and you have to decide which track the train goes down, which one are you going to choose? It's a hard philosophical question, and it's one that's batted around a lot. However, it's also a philosophical question. It's one of those that, you know, you're not supposed to have to choose in real life. But Feyre has to choose, and it's heartbreaking and sad, but it's also kind of nice because all of the fairies recognize what's happening, and they recognize the sacrifice that Feyre is making, and the 3 fairies down there also recognize what's happening and the sacrifices that are being made. Until the last fairy. Guess who it is, guys? Tamlin. This is where it doesn't make sense to me, because part of the curse is Amarantha taking the High Lord's hearts. So they don't have a heart. So that means that they can't be killed. So why did Amarantha put Tamlin there? If only for expecting Feyre to not kill him. Okay, so she doesn't kill him and no one's released. But she does kill him. But Amarantha still doesn't release anyone. So what ends up happening is Amarantha uses some magic and tries to kill Feyre, and in the middle of this, Feyre answers the riddle. And the answer to the riddle is love, and that's so cute. And Feyre nearly dies, so all the lords of the High Court give her like a star? Or essence? Or something? And turn her into a High Fae. Delightful. It was an interesting read. It was very good, very entertaining. Like I said, very delicious, and it's drama. It's drama. It's like, because it's not a fantasy where you're going in and you're gonna learn about this magic system and the fairies and all of these things. It's not. It is a love triangle story that takes place in a magical world. You're welcome. I did enjoy it. I did give it 3 stars, only because I feel like it was something that was very predictable, and there were some small issues that I had, mainly their immature relationship and the reasoning for certain topics being brought up. Why? Is it to emphasize an immature relationship that we shouldn't be rooting for anyways? Or is it foreshadowing how this relationship is actually going to end and what's to come. So, super dramatic, super delicious. I would say it's one of those like guilty pleasure books that you know isn't giving you anything new. It's not an epic fantasy. It's nothing like that. It is a guilty pleasure. It's delicious and dramatic, and it really hits a lot of it plays the hits, you know? It plays the hits. We've got, Forbidden Love. I would say some, Forbidden Love always comes with some witty banter because they're almost enemies. Like, they force themselves to be enemies. And you got, like, the mystical world, and it's beautiful, and you've got tall, dark, handsome, third, possible love triangle. It plays the hits. She knew what she was doing. It's not a bad book in any sense. It's just nothing fairly new. So I am going to continue with this series. I'm probably going to pick it up for Christmas, so I will be continuing probably next year. However, I will be continuing. It's definitely not something that I'm going to drop or I think isn't worth my time, because it totally is. This looks fine, just fine. I hope you had fun here. I had fun talking to you guys about A Court of Thorns and Roses. I'm planning to actually do a Get Ready With Me and spoiler talk for all of the books, so that way we can have one big long conversation about all of these books. I'm really glad I got to read a book that a lot of the community is in love with, and a series that the community is in love with, because I feel like I better understand the community now. And I think we're all kind of on the same page about what the hits are, so kind of glad about that. Hope you guys had a great time today, and have a great day, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!